Well, you can't lose on a bye week, which means the Frogs aren't coming off of a loss on Saturday because they didn't play a football game on Saturday. We are at the midpoint of the season. We're going to talk about how to restructure our expectations for the second half of the season and what Big 12 teams have been most impressive thus far right now on Frogs Insider. Hey, Frog fans, welcome into another episode of Frogs Insider. Jamie Plunkett here alongside Melissa Treewasser. Frogs Insider podcast presented by the Flying T Club. Melissa,
We're here.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
By the way,
thank you.
Been a minute. We
Yeah.
had a couple entertaining shows while you were gone.
I'm
held
starting.
the fort down.
I'm feeling like maybe the people were not missing me that much, based on how many people seem to be enjoying Marshall's takes on the season. But
Look,
who can blame him? Because Marshall is the absolute best.
Marshall Newhouse came in, did a great job, and turned in the most listened to episode of the podcast to date. So
I'm not taking it personally. I'm fine. JB, quit asking me. I'm fine. Everything is okay. Don't worry about it. It's great. No, I was super. I love the episode. Marshall is. I know you and I both think so highly of him. He's been doing some awesome work across multiple platforms and calling some TCU games from the booth as well. So pretty awesome to have him on. Glad he could stop by. I'm sure we will get him to swing back by at some point later this season again, because the people want more Marshall. That much is obvious.
anytime you have a Super Bowl
Yeah.
champion offensive lineman
Yeah.
talking about the offensive line, I feel like that's quality content.
It helps. Have you
and
gotten to wear the ring? Have you?
No,
I've gotten to wear. I haven't. I think I've seen the ring, so it's pretty cool.
Look, I don't know how to phrase this, but it's just I feel like it would be weird
Okay, fair
for
enough.
me to ask another grown man if I could try his ring on. You know,
I think that's a you problem. I think it's a you problem.
maybe it is. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a me problem. Maybe it's a masculinity problem. I don't know. But
We can unpack that after the show. Yeah.
I don't think there's ever going to be a point in time in my life where I'm going to be asking to try on another man's ring. That's
Cool.
just
Okay.
me.
That's fine.
That's my own thing that I've got to work through.
Yeah, that's right. We all have our hills and valleys.
We do, and so does TCU football. We're going to get into what the second half of their Hills and Valleys season could look like here in a minute. But first, Melissa, a little podcast business, because we are the Frogs Insider podcast presented by the Flying T Club. Flying T Club is TCU's NIL collective. They are the only NIL collective for TCU. You can go to flyingtclub.com to see how you can participate in their work today. They partner with over 110 TCU student athletes. They also partner with a variety of organizations in and around the city of Fort Worth, making a lot of good things happen, frankly, for the city of Fort Worth. They're partnering TCU student athletes with the organizations and a lot of really cool stuff. So flyingtclub.com is where you can go to see how you can get involved either financially or volunteering. I know that they would love to have you over there at flyingtclub.com. And we are also part of the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Republic of Football Network. You can find this show and a show for every D1 program in the state of Texas in the same feed just by searching Republic of Football Network wherever you get your podcasts. Super thankful to DCTF for being a part of that network as well. And as always, if you just want Frogs Insider stuff only, you can just search Frogs Insider wherever you get your podcasts, and our feed will show up. We do some shows outside of the DCTF weekly show, so there's more content in our feed than there is in the DCTF feed as far as TCU stuff is concerned. And you can find all of our shows in video form, along with post-game shows, pre-game shows, midweek pressers, all this kind of stuff over at the Frogs Insider YouTube channel, which, Melissa, is closing in on 800 subscribers.
Oh, God, which means that we're really close to hitting another milestone and doing more terrible things.
Yes, 1,000 subscribers by Halloween is the goal. It is, as of this recording, October 13th. So we've got a lot of time. We're gaining ground on 1,000 real quick.
And
So-
if you don't know, when we hit 1,000, if we hit 1,000 by Halloween, Jamie and I get to pick punishments for each other. So I have determined that I'm going to put out a Twitter poll to do something terrible to Jamie, and Jamie has reached to the high upper echelon of important TCU people to come up with something awful for me. So you guys want to see us hit 1,000 because you want to see us suffer. We've learned that you do enjoy watching us suffer. So we are here for it.
Melissa, I've actually reached up to the higher upper echelon of all humanity. Reached out to Roger Goodell.
So
Melissa,
God incarnate.
Your punishment if we get to 1,000 subscribers is that you have to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys for the remainder of the regular
I thought you
season.
were going to make me be the quarterback because I just would have to take punishment because, man, even I felt bad for Dak Prescott today. I am no Cowboys fan, but that felt bad.
TJ Bass. Look, I feel bad calling out any single offensive lineman after that performance today because they were all hot doo-doo ass. But TJ Bass, my brother, you got to get it figured out.
Yeah.
We gotta get it figured out.
Marshall's still in game shape. Maybe he could.
Marshall's
suit up
a
for
tackle.
the boys. Yeah.
Marshall's a tackle, but I'm sure he could slide in and take 10 snaps at left guard if he really needed to.
Yeah, anything is possible.
My God. Anyways, we're not here to talk about the Dallas Cowboys.
Thank God.
Thankfully.
Well, we have our own other disappointing football program to talk about, but
They're
fine.
both 3-3. They're both 3-3, and for both of them, it feels like the world is fully ending.
So true.
But Melissa, we are going to jump into a couple of different things. Like I said in the preview, we're going to jump into the second half of the season. We're going to talk about how can we adjust expectations midseason? What from what we've seen on the field so far for TCU can reasonably be fixed in the middle of the season, and then we're going to take a look around the Big 12, talk about some teams that have been really impressive, some other teams that have been maybe surprising in a bad way, and then we'll hop into a little bit of TCU soccer and volleyball talk because both of those teams are rolling right now, and it's pretty great to see. But Melissa, first, you've been out of the country.
I have.
For a little while. What was the coolest thing you did while you were overseas?
I think that my favorite thing was probably taking a cooking class in Rome and learning how to make pasta from an actual Italian chef who was like one of the first people on the ground at Italy. So if you guys have, I think there's an Italy somewhere around DFW, isn't there? I believe so. So that was cool. I made really delicious pasta. 3 of the people that were there randomly in my class were from like 20 minutes from my hometown. So that was really fun. I am certainly 30% pasta at this point. I am 30% Hofbrauhaus beer from my time in Munich, and I don't know, 40% just lack of sleep. So I will say that traveling with older parents and young nieces was a lot. I became intimately familiar with the Italian healthcare system because my mom and dad both took little tumbles in Florence. No. Yeah. So, man, I'll tell you though, $100 for 2 sets of x-rays and stitches felt pretty good leaving the hospital. You know, it was pretty great.
Bad.
Yeah. Not too bad. And also learned all about, you've been through this, but 3-year-old tantrums. Yes. Those in foreign countries, those are experiences. So we went through a lot. It was a great trip. It was a long trip. I just got home today. You can see it in my eyes. I've got a little bit of crazy eyes going, and we're okay with that. At some point, I'm gonna sleep, and it's homecoming week at my school this week. So we're great. Everything's awesome. But yeah, I taught my niece how to prost in the Hofbrauhaus. Like, that's fun. She's 3.
Heck yeah.
So there we go.
Maybe that's what led to the tantrum, is because now she's going to want to prost all the time.
Oh, this bougie 3-year-old discovered sparkling water and will only now drink sparkling water.
Good for her.
Sent her back with my sister. That's her problem now.
Yeah, see, this is the aunt life. Now, on the other side of that is the parent life, which is on the receiving end of most of this madness. And I can tell you that tantrums after seeing aunts and uncles and grandparents that spoil you or betroth all of their love on you, they just reach a different level.
Listen, the tantrums were happening before we met up with them in Germany, though. So I take zero blame, but I do take as much credit as I would like to be given at any given moment. So, but it was awesome. I ate a lot of really, really good food, and now I got to get back on that. Eat right, work out, do all the things, and get my body back to like a normal.
I hear you.
I'm not functioning at a high level at this point. So.
Well, that's fair. Well, after this, go straight to sleep, and maybe we'll see. We'll see how you recover this week.
It's a good thing we're not like going to Utah this weekend or anything like that.
Yes. We will both be in Utah this weekend. Looking forward to your preview episode of that game at some point. We'll be boots on the ground for Utah. Yikes. We'll see.
Utah at night.
I think that might be one of the football teams we talk about a little bit later on in the show. But Melissa, let's go ahead and jump in. Hit the reset button on the season so far. TCU is 3-3. They're coming off of their bye week, coming off of a really disappointing loss to Houston, and having lost 3 of their last 4. How do we evaluate the first 6 games of the season for TCU?
I mean, I think that you can't really look at this in a big picture sense as anything other than disappointing. You can kind of write off you losing to UCF. Well, now you can't, because I'm gonna have to make my confession here, or take ownership of the fact that I believed in UCF and I put way too much credence into them beating TCU and the way they beat TCU, because they're bad, and that's unfortunate. We'll get to them later, but I think that what you don't have a team that just seems like it gives up. Or you didn't, at least until that Houston game. That was just to me very much a give up performance. Let me tell you, paying for a VPN and waking up at 1 a.m. Italy time to watch that and staying up for the entirety of it, great decision making on my part. But yeah, I mean, I think that we've been told now the same story for 18 games, pretty much, of. They weren't ready to play. They weren't the more fired up team. They weren't the team that was more excited to play football, that the coaches need to go back to the drawing board, that I'm not sure why this is happening. And I think that you can take that, after the Colorado game to open the 2023 season. I think you can take that maybe after the SMU game, but you're starting to see a pattern of behavior without changes. And what is it? They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. It feels like that's a little bit about what's happening around TCU football right now. And I'm not sitting here saying that I have the answers, or I know what to do, or I know what's going on in the locker room, or why things aren't changing. But what we can see from a fan perspective, from a media perspective, from a covering the team perspective, is that we have seen the same actions and the same results now for a season and a half, and it's very, very obvious that it's not working. We've made some changes, but that change is not going to be immediately effective. We're changing a coordinator, changing a defensive system, needing a position that hasn't been recruited at the school for several years. Is not going to be an overnight fix, but you aren't seeing gradual improvement week to week, and I think that's where the disappointment is, and that's true, I think, in all 3 phases of the game.
I think you're right. I think it is a disappointment across all 3 phases. Special teams has been a real struggle again for the second consecutive season as well, which is not something that I think we talk about enough on this show, or that TCU folks talk about enough generally. But that's been, and you can say, freshman punter, freshman kicker, sure, but it's more than just kicking, right? It's about coverages. It's about a lot of different things, and it really hasn't been up to par either. And I think for me, when we start to look back on the first half of this season and we say, okay, well, they were 3-3, they lost at least 2 games they shouldn't have lost. They probably shouldn't have lost to SMU the way they did.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have necessarily been a surprise to lose to SMU. That seems to be a pretty good team this year. It's just, I think, really disappointing to see some of the mistakes that cropped up in 2023 continue to persist. Like you said, the tackling issues, the defensive alignment issues, the play calling issues offensively that have stifled what has been on and off a very good scoring offense at times. They can put the ball in the end zone, and they're doing it, especially from a red zone efficiency standpoint, much better than they did last year. But there are still some odd things here and there that are holding the offense back in a few different ways. And, you take an overarching look at it all, and you say, like you said, Melissa, don't know what the answers are. The most disconcerting part of all of this is that it doesn't seem like Sonny Dykes has the answers.
Either. Yeah.
Because on Friday night after the Houston game, he said he said pretty much flat out, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know why this happened. That's not a good sign. I think it's a little bit of a red flag there, a little bit of an alarm. Sam Kahn, who was on the show last week as well, said he didn't think it was as big of a red flag or a fire alarm as maybe some TCU fans do at this point, and just kind of credit it to Sonny's authenticity and accountability. But at the same time, how many times are we going to hear him say he doesn't know until the thing gets fixed?
And that to me, I think, is the issue. It's not that he said it. I love his authenticity. I love his transparency in that regard. But and Sam is awesome. But there's a reason Sam hasn't probably watched many Sonny Dykes press conferences over the last 2 years, because they haven't been a team that's been relevant. And so you hear it one time and you think, oh, wow, this is refreshing. This is authentic. This is transparent, whatever else. But when you've heard it now, 10 times, It feels like I would say after every loss over the past 2 seasons, we've been kind of given that same message. And I don't know if that's a culture issue. I don't know if that's a coaching issue, but it's an issue and it's a problem. And it has not been fixed. And now you've had a season and a half to get it right. And you have a lot of these same players that lived through last year and said, we're not doing this again. And that was the message we heard from these players all through fall camp. It's not going to be like last year. It's not going to be like last year. At the end of the day, it's basically like last year. There's a little bit more fight, but it's still it's a lot of empty calories, right? Like same thing I'd say around the offense. There's a lot of empty calories in that offense. They put a lot of points on the board, but they can't convert in big moments. There's too many turnovers. Josh Hoover, the thing that we're told he was really working on is balancing his ability to take chances and be a gunslinger with making the play that's in front of him. And now I think he's pressing. He's gotten desperate. He's trying to do too much. And so we're seeing these really careless and inexcusable almost turnovers at some point. Some of them aren't his fault, but some of them are poor decision making. And I think that in the Houston game, it was very, very obvious that he was just trying to do it all. And that's not his game. That's not where he's going to shine and be at his best. And so these issues compound as they do in team sports. And all of a sudden you're looking around and you've got 110 guys looking at each other going, I don't understand why this is happening.
Yeah, you really do. So we're not going to rehash any more of the first half of the year because it's done. There's 3-3. They're coming off their bye. But the reality is the schedule gets a little bit tougher in the back half of the year. It starts with Utah. They go to Utah on Saturday, 9:30 Central Time kickoff p.m., 8:30 Mountain Time, very late. Then they come back home. The next week they host Texas Tech, who right now
they look
undefeated in conference, sitting atop the Big 12 standings currently. Then they travel down to Waco to Baylor. They host Oklahoma State. So those are 2 games where no matter how bad the year has gotten for TCU, you look at both of those and say probably going to be favored, should probably come away with wins. Second bye week on November 16th, and then you finish out at home against Arizona and a trip up to Cincinnati. So
Cincinnati
Melissa,
looks real feisty right now too.
And so as we look at these last 6 games of the year, Melissa, what are your second half expectations looking at that schedule, knowing what the team has to work on, et cetera, et cetera?
I mean, it depends how you define expectations. Like, I think I went into this season thinking that 6 wins was the absolute floor for this team. And now I don't know that there's a path to get there. I think at this point, Sonny Dykes can save this season for TCU fans by beating Texas Tech and Baylor. You've got to win those 2 games. I think if you lose one or both of those games, then the season is a disaster, and you're probably 5-7 at that point. I don't expect to go to Utah and win, even as shaky as Utah looked this past weekend, and Cam Rising does not look to be close to 100%, but they can run the football. And they have a really, really smart coach. And so I just expect them to run the heck out of the football and to beat TCU down that way like every other team has so far this season. That Texas Tech, they look a heck of a lot better than I think a lot of people anticipated after they struggled with ACU.
Myself included.
Yeah, and myself too. I will eat crow on that one. That team is really coming together, and the quarterback play has been better than I thought it would be early on this season. He looks healthy finally, so I think that's a huge part. Baylor, like that's going to be a true,
rock fight, I think.
Yeah, between 2 really, really desperate teams and 2 coaches that are going to feel like they're fighting for their jobs likely at that point. So that's a toss up. Like you cannot lose to Baylor. It doesn't matter that game's in Waco. Like you lose to Baylor this season is an abject failure in my opinion. I think that's how the fan base will look at it at least. And then you've got Arizona, which, doesn't look great, but it's still probably more talented than TCU based on what we've seen on a game-to-game basis. And that Cincinnati game looks tough. So, I think that 2 wins feels about right, which is a little bit terrifying. I think there's definitely a path to 3 wins, and 4 wins isn't out of the question. But if TCU can get to 6 wins, you can kind of salvage some semblance of this season and start building towards the future. You get rid of a lot of guys after this year. There's a lot of seniors. There's a lot of veterans. You're probably going to lose some guys to the portal based on how the last 2 years have gone. It might be time just to kind of wipe the slate clean and start fresh, but you're going to need that bowl game. You're going to need that experience. You're going to need those extra practices. So I I don't look at the schedule and say TCU is definitely going to make a bowl. I look at the schedule and say, man, they're going to have to really turn things around after this bye week to get to bowl eligibility. And it to me, it's really sad to be at this point in the season and just hoping to get that, to find those 3 additional wins.
Yeah, when I look at this schedule, I see Utah and Texas Tech, which have 2 of the 3 leading rushers, not only in the Big 12, but in the country.
Awesome.
Both of those running backs are top 10 in the country in total yards so far. I look at Oklahoma State with an Ollie Gordon running back that has not gotten off the ground yet, but hey.
But still Ollie Gordon.
Nothing like a get-right game for Ollie Gordon there. So, yeah, I think when you start to talk about resetting expectations for the second half of this year, you really have to ask yourself, what about TCU's challenge? Like, what about TCU is fixable right now?
Yeah.
Can you fix a run defense like this right now? Like, have they been able to find a solution over the course of the bye week and now doing Utah prep this upcoming week that will allow them to be better against the run? Because you can't change personnel, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to change scheme. So what do you do feasibly to improve in your run defense? Is it just a matter of tackling better? Because realistically, they have had a couple games where they've tackled really well. They've had a couple games where they've tackled really poorly. But a lot of these times, the first point of contact for a running back hasn't been until 4 or 5 yards downfield. So how much does wrapping up and tackling actually improve things when you're talking about a run defense? When you're talking about a running game, on the other side of things, that's one of the issues that the offense has had this year, is that it's been so wholly one-dimensional that Josh Hoover's had to do all the things you just talked about having to play some hero ball and make some decisions that maybe he shouldn't make because he's trying to win football games for this team, and his running game and a lot of times his offensive line in the passing game has let him down. So I don't know how much of that truly is fixable to a point where you're starting to flip results from losses to wins. Can you start being more competitive? Can you start being more physical? Can you start executing at a higher level? Absolutely. But the losses that they've suffered this year, and even at moments in wins, the execution and the discipline has been so poor that I don't know how much mid-season improvement needs to happen before you're actually talking about making a difference in the win column. Now, you've got some teams that are in dire straits on this schedule.
Yeah.
You're looking at that Baylor game and you're thinking Dave Aranda probably isn't making it out of this year. At the very least, he's not making it into 2025. And if you help Dave Aranda have a get-right game, that's tough. I mean, look at it this way. A third of this year's schedule for TCU was against in-state rivals, or just in-state opponents, we'll say that. And they've already gone 0-2 against SMU and Houston. And they still have Texas Tech and Baylor to go. Could you imagine a world where TCU goes 0-4 against in-state opponents, and that's okay?
And that what it would do on the recruiting trail too, right? Like, that's just a bad look all the way around. Let me ask you a question going back to the point that you made. You can't change scheme, you can't change personnel really, but one thing that we can look at this schedule going forward and say is I don't want to say there's not an elite quarterback. There's not a quarterback that's playing at an elite level until you get to Arizona, right? And even that, they have kind of struggled on the offensive side of the ball. Do you want to see Andy Avalos sell out against the run? And because he's got a multiple front, right? And we've seen a lot of 3-man front. Did we want to see him drop an extra guy in the box and say we're going to sell, even though coverage has been an issue on the outside, but I would like to see them sell out against the run on Saturday and just say, Cameron Rising, you looked really, really shaky last week. Let's make you win the game by throwing the football, because we haven't seen a team need to do that or be able to do that or want to do that against TCU so far this season. Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I think it goes game by game, because you're right. Cam Rising struggled. I mean, his footwork he got rolled up on early in that game. His hand didn't look right, like he could grip the ball well. He wasn't transferring weight. I wonder how bad his knees are right now.
He's 100 years old, and he's been hurt 17 times, poor guy. So they cannot be good.
Right. And so, when you're thinking about, okay, well, they've got Bernard, this running back who's a stud, and then they've got a quarterback who's really struggling to stay upright. Yeah, I would sell out against the run. I mean, that's how Arizona State beat them on Friday night. Arizona State loaded the box over and over again. They blitzed. They got Rising out of his timing. And Kyle Whittingham, for whatever reason, simply refused to go back to Wilson, the true freshman backup there, because I don't know if there's a concern about the number of interceptions he's thrown this year or whatever was going on in Whittingham's mind. But that was Arizona State's game plan, and it worked just well enough. Now, they also have Cam Scatterbo.
Stingers up, go Sac State. That's a Sac State kid right there.
Yeah, and so, I mean, he had a fantastic football game.
He's incredible.
And part of the reason Arizona State was able to do what they did defensively was because they could trust the offense to move the ball, score points, and kill clock to shorten the game. And so I think Arizona State's game plan is the recipe. I just don't know, unless we see some wild change both in the run defense and the run game offensively, if TCU's capable of doing that. You get down, and I mean, you look at Tech, and really, I mean, Taj Brooks has been amazing, but they've had a pretty balanced offense this year. Baron Morton has stayed healthy. He's looked good. He's only thrown 2 interceptions this year to 14 touchdowns. So, I mean, he's had some good success in the passing game. But that's another one where, you've got a running back that can absolutely kill you. And the game can get away with you pretty quickly if you don't contain Taj Brooks to an extent. I keep looking at these Baylor and Oklahoma State games, and I'm saying to myself, if TCU can't get those two, then I mean we're talking about the possibility of like 3-9.
Yeah,
truly. And I know that the Anon accounts on Twitter this week, I don't know if you've seen because you've been out of the country, Melissa, but they've all started to do the bye week reset, talking about 9-3 and how everything's going to be great, and coming out of the bye week they're going to get it all fixed. And I know that some of it's sarcastic, some of it's wishful thinking, but looking at the schedule and looking at just the opponents that you've got, you're gonna run into some desperation on the other side of the ball for the rest of the year. I mean, Arizona is pretty one-dimensional, but they've still got, like you said, a good quarterback and a hell of a wide receiver. Cincinnati defensively has looked phenomenal despite the injuries that they've suffered on that side of the football.
And they're good enough offensively. Their quarterback's playing, I mean, I think far better than anyone anticipated that he'd be, especially over the last couple of games. I cannot remember his name, and I feel bad about
Brendan
that.
Sorsby. Yeah, Sorsby's looked good. I mean, he's completing at almost 67%.
Yeah.
Right. Kiner's running the ball. He's averaging about 83 rushing yards a game. They've got some good weapons on both sides of the football there.
And they play hard. That's the thing is, you talk about desperation. The thing that you haven't said yet that we know is true is TCU is desperate. They don't play desperate right now. Right. And you would like to see them play with a level of desperation. And the Houston game to come out so flat on a Friday night with your home field against a bad team, like this team has not earned the right to assume anything on any given weekend. And you want to see them play with that desperation, that hunger, and that fight like they did against Kansas. But why have they only done it twice this season?
And why have they only done it in spurts, even in those two games?
Yeah, that's also true. I mean,
the first half, the first two drives against Kansas felt like more of the same, right?
First two drives against Stanford too, right? Yeah, that's how that game started.
Marching right down those fields, scoring touchdowns, little resistance. And then in the Houston game, just down 17-0 before you can even get your helmet on.
To a team that hadn't scored in 8.5 quarters.
Yeah, brutal. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tougher second half than it was the first half, and TCU came out of the first half 3-3. So, unless there's dramatic change, a level of desperation, and a level of execution and discipline that we haven't seen to this point, I have a hard time. I have a hard time seeing TCU making a bowl, frankly.
Yeah.
And the question then becomes, how okay is the administration with missing a bowl 2 years in a row? I mean, we were sitting here after the UCF game, after the SMU game, talking about, well, obviously 8-4. We were talking about the season 8-4. You lost these two games in really disappointing fashion, but everything's still ahead of you, right? The SMU game wasn't a conference loss, like Sonny Dykes said afterwards. And thinking, okay, well, the people calling for Sonny's head, like that's a little premature. That's kind of ridiculous. He's gonna get 2025. To now saying, okay, well, what happens if you're 3-9 or 4-8? What really, like, how content are you in the midst of an ever-changing, ever-influx college football landscape to tolerate the potential of another 4-8 or 5-7 in 2025. Really, really challenging stuff. Glad I don't have to make those decisions.
Yeah.
But I think it's reasonable for TCU fans to be concerned at this point, just looking at the second half of this year and thinking about the state of the rest of the conference, Melissa, which is a great segue into the next part of what we're talking about tonight, because I want to talk about some good football tonight. I'll be damned if we don't talk about a little good football tonight.
We've talked about plenty of bad football between the Cowboys and TCU, so yes.
It's true. So let's do this. We each get one, and you'll go first. Which Big 12 team has been most impressive to you through the midway point of the season?
Listen, there's two teams that absolutely deserve credit, but you said one. I'm only going to say one. I'm not even going to mention the other one. And it's the team that I have absolutely. There's one team that I don't like to watch that's really good, and there's one team that I absolutely love to watch, and I am all in on BYU right now. Their quarterback is a complete and total madman. He's insane. He completes like 50% of his passes, but still manages to put 40 points on the board every week. I have no idea how it happens. There is very few people in college football that are easier to root for than Kalani Sitake. Just one of the most wonderfully genuine, down-to-earth coaches that exists on this planet. I just, the way that team, they are exactly what we hoped TCU would be. Yep. Coming off of a very disappointing season where they underachieved, they could not perform at a high level. They brought in some new pieces. They brought a lot of guys back. The culture there is maybe culty but strong, and they have built a team that does not quit, and they get a lot of like 2022 level TCU bounces. I mean, that Kansas State game, Avery Johnson forgot how to play football for like 3 drives in a row, and BYU turned just insane turnovers into points each time. They had that ridiculous punt return. Obviously, they have that luck and that mojo and the vibes around the program that you need in order to be successful in a cannibalistic conference like the Big 12 is right now. Like, they are getting everything that they need in order to clear a path towards Arlington. They are super fun to watch. Their defense is absolutely electric. They play very, very disciplined football. And that offense, like, they are capable of getting hot. It's like, I cannot remember. Again, I keep forgetting quarterback names, but this JUCO transfer that came out of absolutely nowhere, he's like a poker player that just keeps hitting, like he keeps turning the river card. It's coming up aces every time. So, I've been super impressed with them. I had them read completely wrong coming into this season. And I have really, really enjoyed watching the way that they play. Thank you. Yes. I've completely loved watching them play, and watching the attitude that they play with, and just they are a good football team. They don't have a lot of stars, but they are making the most of their opportunities, and they're making their own luck and turning it into points, which is really fun to watch.
It's pretty funny that you mentioned that Jake Retzlaff is a JUCO transfer, Melissa.
Yeah, because he is
Jewish.
He's the BY Jew. The BY Jew is his nickname.
One of 3 Jewish students on BYU's campus. Pretty cool. They did a little feature on him and his faith story and just how he ended up at BYU in the middle of them absolutely shelling Arizona on Saturday. Yeah. And it was pretty cool.
I'm sure, much like I did my freshman year at TCU, he's come back to a Book of Mormon sitting on his dorm room bed at one point or another. So, these things happen. But
I just assume that every dorm at BYU is a lot like every hotel that you go to, and you just open the drawer.
Yes, and there's a Book of Mormon.
There's just a Bible kind of preloaded in there.
Yeah.
But for them, obviously, it'd be the LDS version of the Bible. All right, so Melissa, BYU.
But we don't want to derail this into a religious conversation.
So BYU is sitting there 6-0. With wins over Southern Illinois. They won at SMU, at Wyoming, at home. You already mentioned it. They drubbed Kansas State. They went on the road and beat Baylor, held on late after getting a big lead in that one, and then came back to Provo and thumped Arizona out of their first bye week. Here's the second half of their schedule. Home against Oklahoma State, at UCF, another bye, at Utah for the Holy War, home against Kansas, at Arizona State, home against Houston to finish it out. Do they have a clean sheet at the end of the year?
I don't see anybody going undefeated in this conference. I think they're going to drop a game, unfortunately, and it's going to be something random. Like they're going to go lose at UCF or something. Is kind of my thought. I think they end up the dangerous game on the schedule is obviously Holy War, and that game could have massive implications. Even though Utah's kind of fallen off here a little bit, but I don't see them going undefeated. But I do see them winning enough games to earn a place in the Big 12 championship.
I think Arizona State's going to knock them off.
Yeah, they're tricky. I mean, the Sun Devils are tricky. Yeah.
I think Arizona State's going to get them. I will say this about Arizona State. They're not the team that I'm picking with as being who's impressed me most. I'm going with a different team, but I do want to just say Arizona State has played one good quarterback this year.
Yeah.
And they lost to Baron Morton.
Yeah.
As much as I love Jalen Daniels, he's not a good quarterback this year.
No,
We just got to say
unfortunately,
that.
yeah.
The team that has impressed me the most this year, though, are our good friends up in Ames, Iowa.
Yeah.
The Cyclones, also 6-0. But looking at their schedule, Melissa, and God, let's back up. Matt Campbell has done this thing now twice at the same school where he has, quote unquote, resurrected the program, gotten them into a point where they're a tough defensive out. They're winning football games. They're competing for the tops of the standings in the conference. They've got a clear path to Arlington at this point. I don't know if he's going to start popping up as a popular name in head coaching searches.
He doesn't have an agent.
Kind of stuff.
He doesn't even have an agent, JB.
But I do think it's interesting that we've seen what happens when you stick with a head coach through tough times.
Yeah.
Who had a little bit of success prior, and now he's starting to kind of cycle back up to the top of the conference again with Iowa State. But here are the games that they've had so far this year. They beat North Dakota. They won at Iowa. Second time Matt Campbell has ever done that. Then they had an early bye. Then they beat Arkansas State, went on the road and shut out Houston, beat Baylor, and then went on the road this past week and beat West Virginia. So pretty light first 6 games, frankly. They host UCF this weekend before hitting their second bye, and then they finish the year Texas Tech, at Kansas, home against Cincy, at Utah, home against Kansas State. So I think this is there's a real come back to earth potential for Iowa State the second half of the year.
What has come back to earth for this team? How many games do you see them losing out of their remaining 6?
I think Tech could get them. I think Cincy, Utah, and Kansas State could all get them.
Oh, wow.
I think if Utah gets right, I think they could get them. I could also see them getting 4 of those 6 instead of just 2. But Melissa, how funny would it be?
Oh.
Lean in real close. How funny would it be?
It's just us listening, right?
It's just you and me right now. Nobody's paying attention. How funny would it be if we have all of these Matt Campbell is back, Iowa State is back conversations, and then he still doesn't win 10 games this year?
Well, this is the first time in Iowa State's history they've ever started 6-0, or since 1938. I think I saw it, since they started a season 6-0. So
timeout. Since 1938.
I think so.
So what you're telling me is that TCU's winning the national championship this year?
God, if they make a bowl game, they get to bowl eligibility, they might win a natty.
Heard it here first.
Yeah, I think Iowa State, and listen, if you talk to Iowa State fans, and while I was sad watching TCU play Houston at 1:30 in the morning, I was getting texts from our good friend Levi, who was like, "What's wrong with TCU?" And I was like, "Buddy, how much time do you have?" But he was trying to talk me into Iowa State going 12-0, winning a Big 12 championship, and making a run to the national championship, because that's what we love our Iowa State fans. They drink a lot, so they can easily talk themselves into these delusions. But I do think Iowa State is a good team, but like you said, they have a lot ahead on their schedule, and it'll be interesting to see if this is the year that they get over that 9-win hump, or if you are being a hater and bringing them back down to earth with the power of your words.
We'll see. We'll see who ends up in Arlington. That's the next question.
I mean, it's so hard when you have 3 teams that are unscathed in Big 12 play, or maybe 4 teams that are unscathed in Big 3. Yeah, so Texas Tech, BYU, and Iowa State are all sitting tied atop the conference. We talked about Iowa State's schedule. BYU, to me, has the easiest path. Tech still has some potential bumps in the road here along the way, but their path doesn't look quite so hard. I won't trust a Joey McGuire Texas Tech team in November until they actually get it done, right? So I think I need to see a little bit more from them before I say that they have the path. I think BYU for sure is there, and then it's going to come down to, can Iowa State hang on? Does Texas Tech surprise us, or does Utah, like you mentioned, or Kansas State kind of get things turned around? I think Utah probably has the best opportunity to get things turned around. They probably have the most pieces in place, but if Cam Rising is not healthy, I don't see them making it to the Big 12 championship. So I'm gonna say, God, could you imagine a rematch of the Holy War in Arlington? Be pretty freaking lit.
Maybe.
It'd be pretty.
Is that where you're going with?
I don't love it, but I just don't think I can pick Texas Tech. Who's Texas Tech got remaining on their schedule? Look, do my research for me, please, sir.
Okay, well, if you're going to make me do your research, I'm just going to tell you who I think is going to be in Arlington.
All right, do it. I'll let you go first.
I'm going to read you 6 teams. I'm going to read you 6 games.
Okay.
West Virginia.
Okay.
Kansas. Houston. Arizona State. Cincinnati. Iowa State.
Please don't tell me that's Texas Tech's remaining schedule.
No, that's Kansas State's.
Oh. So Kansas State, BYU, and Arlington.
And so they get Arizona State and Cincy at home. They travel to Iowa State the Saturday after Thanksgiving for what will likely be a game that puts one of those 2 teams in the Big 12 championship.
And they only have one conference loss, Kansas State, right? BYU is their only conference loss, yeah.
Correct. Utah already has 2 conference losses. They've
Yeah.
lost back-to-back weeks to Arizona and Arizona State. I'm going to read you 6 more teams. Home against Baylor, at TCU, at Iowa State, home against Colorado, at Oklahoma State, home against West Virginia.
Texas Tech's not making it to Arlington.
You don't
Sorry,
think so?
Red Raiders. Nope. I don't think so. I think there's 3 losses there.
Name them, please.
Okay. So do it again. So
Home against Baylor,
they're going to win that.
at TCU,
I'm gonna pick TCU because I cannot pick against TCU against Texas Tech on our home field.
at
Won't do
Iowa
it.
State,
That's a loss.
home against Colorado,
That's listen, Colorado all of a sudden. Travis Hunter's not healthy. I don't know what his injury status is after Saturday night's game, but Colorado, I wouldn't count him out in Lubbock. That has the potential to be a 55-52 kind of game, and that could go either way.
at Oklahoma State,
I think that's a pretty good rivalry game. I think Oklahoma State has a good shot in that one.
I'm shaking my head no for the
I know
people
you.
listening
Yeah,
in an
yeah, you are.
audio-only format. No, and then home against West Virginia.
They'll win that one. I
Okay.
think 3-3 is. I think 4-2, 3-3 for Tech the rest of the way. So I think Kansas State, BYU is my Big 12 championship game pick.
Okay, well, see, this is unfair because you asked me to do all your research,
Yeah,
and then
and
you
then
didn't
I
even
stole
let me
your
say. You didn't even let me say
It's perfect.
what my thing was after I said if you were going to make me do your research, I'm going to say my thing. So I'm going to say that I think Kansas State and Texas Tech are playing in Arlington in the Big 12 championship, and this is why I think. God, it kills me. I think that BYU is going to hit a couple bumps in the road, and I think one of those bumps, even though they don't. I mean, they already do have a win over Kansas State, so that is something to consider, and they don't play Texas Tech. But I think at Utah is tough.
Yeah.
I just think that's really tough.
For sure.
I think at Arizona State is equally, if not more, tough. And if you run through Oklahoma State, UCF, Kansas, and Houston, I think that those 2 road games might come up and bite you. And I think that Tech has a better opportunity just with the schedule that they have ahead of them to stay unscathed in Big 12 play for longer. I think the Iowa State game is going to be really tough.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be really tough, but I think Iowa State eliminates itself with another loss somewhere else on the schedule. And I think that might be Tech's only loss in Big 12 play.
You are being a big believer in Texas Tech University and Joey
I'm not
McGuire
being
right now.
a big believer. I'm being a realist. And I mean, look, we did the preseason expectations thing where I said Tech was below dirt.
Yeah.
So this is me
Evening.
looking at what they've done so far. Impressive wins over Arizona State and Cincinnati. I would say, at this point. Those are both impressive wins. I would say that, the win at Arizona was a good win for them. And now they're coming out of the bye week against Baylor and TCU. And before you blink, they could be 7-1.
I think you're feeling really good about Arizona State, and that's where I disagree. I don't think that team is going to be a pushover, but I would rather play at Arizona State than at Iowa State for sure. Like, I think that Iowa State's a guaranteed L for Texas Tech, because Iowa State could definitely be playing, or have a shot in the Big 12 championship on the line at that spot too. So I think at the end of the day, all this conversation is doing is making me realize what a missed opportunity TCU did. I mean, what a missed opportunity this season, because this has been as wide open a conference race. The only one of the teams that we've mentioned that was predicted to be in the top, Kansas State and Utah were the top two finishers. I think Iowa State was fourth or fifth. So you're looking at one of the teams that's going to participate is going to be somebody that was probably picked to finish lower than fifth place in this conference. And TCU had a golden opportunity and really just let it slip away. So I think it's going to be fun to see some fresh blood. I'm excited to not see an Oklahoma, or Texas in there. I think that seeing BYU would be great for the league. Their fan base travels incredibly well. There's a huge BYU fan base population in DFW. I think it would be a great environment. I don't want Kansas State to make it back there because they have theirs. But Texas Tech making a Big 12 championship would be I think a huge deal for that university, especially on the cusp of all the fundraising that they're doing. They've got the Pat Mahomes uniforms now. This is a pivotal point for that program, and getting to play in a Big 12 championship would be massive for them, which just further serves to hurt TCU on the recruiting trail even more.
All right, with that, let's move on. So TCU soccer and volleyball both had really good weeks. Melissa, volleyball went up to do their little Utah tour.
U-tour, I like that.
fell to the Utes.
Very shorthanded.
On a weekend where Melanie Parra barely played.
Yeah.
There was an illness running through the team, so they got 3-0'd against Utah, but bounced back and handed a very good BYU team, a ranked BYU team, their 11th loss in 10 seasons at home.
Yeah, just unbelievable performance by TCU volleyball.
5-set performance, gutted it out, lost the first set, won the next two, lost the fourth, and then did the thing when it mattered most. I think that fifth set was tied 8-8 at one point before TCU finally kind of put it to bed. Really impressive grit from Jason Williams' group on the volleyball court, and I think that's a signal of really good things to come in kind of the back half of this season for TCU volleyball.
Melanie Parra is making a case to be an All-American this year, and she's one of those players that, because she plays a sport that hasn't traditionally been a powerhouse for TCU, because Jason Williams is still newer in that position, I don't think enough fans are paying attention to her. She is doing things that have literally never been done at TCU volleyball-wise. She's setting every record. She's had multiple Player of the Week nominations. She's had National Player of the Week recognition. This is one of those athletes that is going to be putting herself to be one of the all-time greats at this university across any sport. And so the great thing about volleyball is I was looking, so it's like I've been focused on soccer. I've been going to those games. I've had a lot of other things going on. That volleyball season lasts forever. We still have like another 6 weeks of college volleyball ahead. So this is one of those things, as football starts to wind down, as soccer starts to wind down, basketball will be picking up. But if you have not made it out to Schollmeyer Arena for a TCU volleyball game, it's a great environment. We saw an incredible atmosphere when they had Baylor in town last week and pulled off that win. So this is a team that schedules really hard. That plays really, really well in the best and against the biggest teams, the best moments, and is really going to be prepared, I think, for the postseason by the time Big 12 regular season play is over. So I'm excited to see what they can do. I'm excited for kind of the second half of the season with soccer winding down. They finished their home slate Sunday, which is crazy that the regular season at home is already done for that program. We'll talk about them in a second. But there's a great opportunity to get out and to support some of the volleyball team as they kind of make their mid-season push.
Yeah, like you said, it is a really long schedule. Pulling up that right now. Come on, load. So they are home on Wednesday. Or no, sorry, they're at Texas Tech on Wednesday to finish the 3-game road trip, and then they come home against Cincinnati on Saturday, October 19th. So if you're not going to the Utah game, head over to Schollmeyer, 1 p.m. Saturday afternoon for their game against Cincinnati. It's a pink out, so that's fun. Very exciting. At Baylor, then home on Wednesday against Colorado, home against Iowa State on November 1st, which is also maybe an open exhibition charity game for TCU men's basketball against Arkansas at Dickies.
Oh, maybe.
Not maybe, it is actually. And then finishing out this, the schedule just keeps going.
It keeps going forever.
Yeah. They don't finish the regular season until November 29th.
Yeah, day after Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Brutal.
The same. I think are they at Cincinnati the same time TCU's at Cincinnati? I think you could do a football volleyball doubleheader there. That would be pretty fun. If you want to travel to Ohio in late November, which does not sound very fun. But yeah, there's a lot of games left. The great thing is none of those games start after 6:30 for the rest of the year. There were a lot of 8 p.m. starts in the first month or so of the season, and that's a little bit rough. So very excited about that volleyball program. Equally, if not more so, excited about TCU soccer. And the only reason I say more so is they are just 3 games away from the end of the regular season and heading into postseason play. And when you talk about turning things on at the right time, TCU soccer has really kind of come together in the exact moment. I don't know that Eric Bell could have drawn up the way this team has developed over the course of the season any better than what they're actually doing. Sunday, which is the day we're recording, they played their final home game of the season against Arizona State. They were up 5-0 before you could blink. 5 goals is a ridiculous amount of goals to score in a soccer game. They scored them in the first half. It is, I believe, the second time in the last 2 weeks that they have managed to score 5 goals and a half, because they did so against Colorado as well. And that was a ranked Colorado team on the road. So they're scoring in bunches. They had Cameron Patton, who's quickly become one of my favorite players on the team. This kid is like 5'1", if anything. True freshman, scored her first goal today. She's been really involved on the offense and the defense, just as far as setting other people up. She finally put one in the back of the net. Cam Lancaster, whose the name is very familiar to TCU fans, she has made her return from injury over the last couple of games. She scored her first goal and I think 20th of her career, 18th of her career today as well. Bella Diorio and Caroline Kelly, who are just absolute spark plugs at I think the forward position. I'm still learning soccer. I'm trying really hard. Both scored today as well. And then Morgan Brown, another true freshman, who has, I think, scored in 3 of the last 4 games that she's played. And she scores on a lot of headers, which are really fun to watch. She had a nice left foot goal last week against Colorado, I think, and then had another one today against Arizona State. So this team right now have not lost at home. They have 1 tie. They have not lost in Big 12 play. They are positioned to win the regular season, or to be in the hunt to win the regular season with 3 games remaining. They will go on the road to UCF. That won't be an easy one on Thursday. And then they're at Iowa State, at Oklahoma State to finish the season. So it won't be an easy run to the finish line, but there aren't many programs in the country that are playing better than TCU soccer right now. So, I think that they have a shot to be a 1 or 2 seed in the Big 12 tournament up in Kansas City here in a couple of weeks. And from there's a lot that they can accomplish in the postseason, the NCAA tournament. So I'm excited to kind of see how their seeding and development plays out and where they end up.
Yeah, there's currently atop the Big 12 standings. One of 2 teams that hasn't lost a game in conference play this year, alongside Texas Tech, who they drew with to a 0-0 tie earlier this year. And like you said, yeah, they're in really, really good shape to have a high seed in the Big 12 tournament. And it's really nice to see, after what I would consider a down year last year for women's soccer. You have Eric Bell, who I don't think anybody questions how good of a coach he is. But for him to kind of take a step back, reevaluate, especially on the offensive side of things, because that was just not a good goal-scoring team last year. For him to go out and especially recruit scorers, get some young talent in here, get a couple transfers in here who can put the ball in the back of the net as well. And then beyond just getting talent, scheming around that talent a little differently this season. It's been really impressive to see him adapt to his roster, adapt to the way the game is being played in the conference this year, and it's showing on the field with what they're producing right now as far as wins are concerned. They haven't lost since September 5th, so we're over a month away from TCU's last loss, and that was a road loss at Texas A&M, so not even any kind of conference game, any real game of import, frankly. So yeah, with 3 games left, 11-2-2 so far for women's soccer. Super impressive from them. Super impressive with how Eric Bell, adapts to his talent on his roster and schemes to his talent.
Go figure. Well,
Crazy.
and when you look at the game at A&M and you look at the game at Notre Dame, 2 games where they were really dominated on both sides of the field, both offensively and defensively. This team has grown so much since then. And one of the things I really appreciate about Eric Bell, like you said, he recruited the types of players that he knew could score at this level, but then he's also been playing a ton of players and a ton of freshmen. They have freshmen not just playing, but are really contributing at a high level. This is an old, young team, or a young, old team, because now you have a bunch of freshmen that have played a ton of minutes and scored a bunch of goals for this team that now, as we're getting into the second half of October, are going to be ready for postseason play. And then you have some great veteran leadership, too. Getting Cam Lancaster back is huge for this team just because of the depth, the experience that she provides. Seven, Castaigne, and Oli Pena have been doing incredible things all season long. Seven had 4 goals against Colorado. I mean, and these are older veteran players. And so you have this mix of these young kids that can be trusted in big spots with these veteran leaders who are not just doing exceptional things, but playing super unselfishly. I mean, every freshman that plays is taking minutes away from an older player for the most part, but this team has really come together seamlessly. AJ Hennessy has been just a real glue piece. She's involved, it seems like, in every goal that is scored in one way or the other. They're doing a lot of things well, and there's a lot of different players they can go to in big spots that are being effective for Eric Bell because he trusted them early in the season, and so they're being able to deliver now as we get to the late part.
It's like Kirk Sarlos likes to say, later in the season when he's talking about young players, especially freshmen, they're not freshmen anymore.
Not freshmen anymore.
All right, Melissa, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Frogs Insider.
So I can go to bed?
You can go to sleep, get rested, get ready for your preview of Utah. That episode will be coming later this week as we get ready for the Frogs to embark on the second half of their football journey. Melissa and I will both be in Utah this upcoming weekend at the game. So
might have some special guests join us too. Who knows? Yeah.
If you see us there, say hello. And we will say hello back, I promise. Until next time, don't forget you can find the show wherever you get your podcasts. Go like the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, do it. I'll just say this. If everybody who listened to the Marshall Newhouse episode went and subscribed to the YouTube channel, we would have to do quite a few challenges.
Many things.
Quite a few challenges. So yeah, go like the YouTube channel. Do that. And we will talk to you later this week. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.